Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me again for episode 83 of the show. I am your host, Louise H. Reed. With listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts, I'm the fortunate host here every week to talk life and leadership with ordinary people living extraordinary lives, people who take brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals, and are here to share their journey to help you do the same in yours. I have a super exciting announcement today. A few episodes ago, it was a guest, Carla Howard, that I had on the show. She wanted to give away 3 free spots in her upcoming course that's being launched in March. And I am announcing the winners for the first time today on the show. So as a reminder, the course is called How to Stop Over-Explaining and Increase Your Level of Influence. A big shout out to Carla Howard for gifting these following 3 people with a free spot. And I apologize to the first winner, Stacey Kurzendorfer. You are winner number 1, Alison Bucklin, winner number 2, and Hedieh Azad, winner number 3, in no particular order, even though I ordered them. You are all winners and gain free access to this generous offer. So please message me and I will connect you with Carla. All of you also know that I love giving away Lady Boss Loyalty exclusive swag as a way of showing my gratitude to you for showing up each and every week and sharing your time with me and my guests. Simply comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty and you are automatically entered. You've heard me say a few times that right now I am awaiting my new Lady Boss Loyalty swag. So please comment away and good luck to you. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to today's wonderful guest. Today, we have the honor of spending time with Virginie LemayVriesde. And let me tell you a little bit about Virginie. She is a leadership coach, consultant, and trainer, and she turns managers into global leaders by improving their international leadership skills and confidence. She has more than 20 years experience working in senior leadership roles in large international organizations, most recently with one we all know, and I know I love, and that is Amazon. Virginie has been an expat for the majority of her life and has lived in 6, you heard that right, 6 different countries, and fluently speaks 5 languages. She also wrote a book about a serious car accident she had many years ago and how she recovered from it. The book is entitled My Revenge on Life, and that too can be found on Amazon. I would love to welcome Virginie to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you for having me here.
You are so welcome. I'm thrilled to finally be spending this time with you. And I know that there are many listeners who are eagerly awaiting this show. Many people showing you the love on the post that I shared on LinkedIn. So a lot of eager listeners. So much to uncover, so much to explore, and I'm really eager to jump in. One thing that I find interesting, as you may very well know, is I love to rewind the clock and love to hear how your 6-year-old self saw herself in the world. What did your 6-year-old self think she was going to be when she grew up? I'm sure she wasn't going to be a leadership coach, consultant, and trainer.
No, definitely not. And oh, wow, what a question. Never got that one. So, when I was 6 years old, actually, I grew up in a little town in northern France. And with only white people, Catholic people. So there was nothing that was leading me towards the international role that I've had after that. I actually never knew what I wanted to do. I never thought, all my friends were saying, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse or a stewardess, whatever. I never really knew. But what I do remember, and I may not have been 6, but I was maybe 8 or 9, is that I asked my mom if she could teach me English when I was very young. And in France at that time, you were only starting to learn English at school when you were 11 or 12. So that was very early. And I don't know why, but I've always had this love for languages, this love for foreign countries. And I guess that's how it all started. As I said, never really had any specific job in mind. I know when I was a bit older, when I was a teenager, I was saying I want to be tall, rich, and beautiful. The tall part never really came through. The rich and the beautiful, I'm still working on it. But that's pretty much it. As I said, there was something about the languages and the countries, but not definitely not a specific job in mind. And I never know. And if you would have told me when I was 6 that I would be a leadership coach, I would probably ask the question, what is that? So.
Yes. I love how you answered that question, and I've not had someone answer it that way before. You said to me that no one's asked you that question. Well, I'm happy to say that no one's given me that answer, and I love that. So last week on the show, I had Kristen Sherry, and Kristen said that we ask our kids the wrong question. We ask them, what do you want to be? And we should be asking them, who do you want to be? And so you actually just answered it in that sort of way, right? Tall, rich, and beautiful, which I know was said probably a little bit of tongue in cheek, but at the same time, those are quite good things to aspire to, perhaps, and certainly in our society. And just then the curiosity that you recall having had and that you explored your curiosity, I think is really interesting. So talk to us a little bit about how that continued to unfold in terms of your curiosity around language, around diversity. Obviously, it's a little bit by little bit. You wouldn't have known it as diversity at that time or coined it that way. But I think it's really neat how that started at such a young age and you followed it. Can you walk us through a little bit about, how that sort of unfolded?
Sure. So I went to school, started to learn English, and then 2 years later, I was studying German and Latin. And then until the GCE level before going to university. And going to university, I decided to study foreign languages and international trade. So I had my path again with the languages. And from the time at university, I started to have friends from other countries. I remember having German friends, English friends, from Africa as well, from the French-speaking countries, etc. And it has always been something that I really, really enjoyed because I was always curious to learn about people in other countries and cultures. And from then on, after my first year at university, I went to London and I was an au pair for 2 months. So that was the first time I was living abroad, leaving my family. Again, I went there to improve my English. And from then on, throughout my studies, I had also to do training periods abroad. So I did one first in Germany for 6 weeks, the year after for 3 months. And the last year of my study, I had to do a training period for 6 months. I was lucky enough to be able to go back to the previous company I had been in Germany. And I was supposed to stay there, as I say, for 6 months. And after 3 months, they basically offered me a job. So I decided to stay there. I stayed 1.5 years in Germany, but at that time I didn't really like what I was doing. I was basically only working and sleeping, and I was thinking, I don't want to do that the rest of my life. And so a friend of mine who was who had studied with me and who was now living in the Netherlands had told me, well, it's easy to find a job then. So I had very good contacts with my Dutch clients in Germany. I spoke to him saying that I would love to go to Holland, and somehow he helped me to find an accommodation. And I went to Holland. Within 2 days, I found a job, and that was the beginning of me living as a real expat. I lived in the Netherlands for 12 years. Then I got the opportunity to live in Italy for 1 year. Italy was supposed to be longer, but just before going to Italy, I met my now husband. So I came back to the Netherlands. And now for the last 6 years, I've been living in Luxembourg. And during all my time, whether it was at work or personally, I always had friends from all over the world. And the more I knew people, the more I wanted to know. So I traveled a lot for my work. And when I was not traveling for work, I was traveling personally. And I've always also had the opportunity to manage international teams. So I've had also many international teams. I remember once I set up a team and we had 17 nationalities for 40 people. Then when I came back to the Netherlands, I was working in a bank, and I was asked to set up a team in India. So I had a lot of Indian colleagues working in Holland, so with Dutch colleagues as well. And in Amazon, again, I had also great teams with people from all over the world. So the last one that I was managing, we were 25, and again, 13 different nationalities. And that is actually what I love. It's for some people, it may be challenging because you're dealing, of course, with different cultures, people who don't have English as their mother tongue. So sometimes you have to be careful about what you communicate and how you communicate. But that's the things that actually that I really like, because I think there's always something that we can learn from others if we just take the time to try to understand them.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I believe I read on your website that you believe that 90%, I'm sorry if I'm misquoting you here, but something around that 90% you believe of challenges with people are due to miscommunication.
Yes. Yeah,
and recognizing that our work is becoming increasingly global, are you able to, I know this is a really complicated and complex and multi-layered answer that you'd normally be giving in a training session, but just some high-level tips for those listening who may have multicultural teams. What are some things that you could add some tips or guidance to start to look at this a little bit differently to help the team thrive?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is keep an open mind and don't assume you know everything. What is obvious for me may not be obvious for you, for instance, because I grew up in a certain way, and people who grew up in another country may not be aware of what is obvious for you. So never assume. Always take the time to listen and to give the opportunity to others to ask questions. Sometimes as well, we are always rushing in our work, and we want to have things go quickly and be done yesterday. But sometimes in some cultures, people will not dare to ask questions or will be afraid. So by showing them that it's okay to ask questions or it's okay to disagree, then you give them the opportunity to provide you with their point of view, with their feedback. And that is how you learn, and that's how you include people and make sure that you are not only making decisions from your own perspective, but you have really included all your team members' point of view. And that is how I've always done with my teams. I've always made sure I was taking time to listen to them, to ask them for feedback, and showing them as well what I had decided. And that works because people see that they are involved, that you appreciate their opinion, that you're taking it into consideration. And you may not take everything, or you may not decide what they want, but at least they will understand why you have taken the decision. Because again, you can say, well, I've listened to everybody, you said this and you said that, and now combining everything and with what I know as a leader, then I'm going to take that decision. And people again are appreciative and will respect you because they know that you've not just taken a decision just for the sake of it, but that you've really taken the point of view of everybody.
Great tips. Keep an open mind, never assume, listen, invite opportunity for questions. I like that too, in relation to like inviting opposing points of view.
Yes.
You know, and you can ask, so is there a different option? Is there another idea? Is there another perspective? Exactly. To your point of inviting or creating space for people who might not otherwise feel comfortable with bringing up a conflicting view, when you invite it.
Exactly. And I remember, so one of the best example I had is when I started to work at the bank with my Indian colleagues. At the beginning, I was saying things and say, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. And I know at the beginning, they were all saying yes. And I say, guys, you don't need to say yes if you disagree. It's okay to say no. Please tell me. I will not be angry. I just want to give your opinion. And of course, it takes a while for you to build trust and so that they know you. But after a while, they manage to say, well, no, I don't think this is a good idea, or I think we should do this or that as well. So again, it takes time, but that's really, that's the key, I think, when you're managing a team or you're dealing with people, is really to show them that you're not disregarding them, and you will not agree all the time with them, but at least you are taking their opinion into considerations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that you mentioned that you speak 6 languages. Right now I've heard 4. French, English, German, Latin.
Oh, even Latin. I can't say I'm speaking it anymore.
Okay, it is an old language, but I didn't know if that was included in your 6. So then I've got 3: French, English, German. Yes. What are the other 3 languages that you speak?
So I speak Dutch and Italian as well fluently, and Spanish. I can read, I can follow in conversation, but because I've never really practiced Spanish, when I start speaking, it first comes into Italian. So I can make myself understand, but it's not as fluent as the other languages.
Incredible, incredible. I love that. I love that list. Is there a language that you have a desire to speak that you would like to at some point in your life learn?
Oh, many. So many of them. I would love to learn Mandarin, Chinese. I think it's, and it's the additional challenge is that it's different alphabets. All the languages I speak, I've used the same languages. I've always thought Arabic I would love, Portuguese, Russian. So yeah, many, many languages. I don't know if I'll manage all of them, but they're definitely also still on my list.
One of my boys, he's 14, he is overwhelmed with, I guess in a positive way, but overwhelmed with the number of books that he wishes to read before he dies. He's only 14. Wow. He thinks, so many books, so little time. And it reminded me, you reminded me of him in that so many languages, so little time.
True, very true.
And what an interesting and expansive and exciting way to look at language.
And that's funny you're saying that. Actually, a few days ago, I posted a post in French saying to people that, because in France, a lot of people do not speak English. And I told them, I say, if I can give you one tip is learn English at least, learn other languages, but English, because you have so much information nowadays available on internet. And just by speaking one language, you're losing so much. You are so many things that you don't know. So that's my advice to anybody, and I'm so glad to hear that your son is already thinking that way. It's just one language, obviously, is great, but you can have so many more things by learning other languages.
You really can. So many things get enriched, I believe. Not only does your brain do some amazing things, and different parts of your brain get fired up and create new neural networks, which I think is incredible and certainly helps brain health and Alzheimer's and other things down the road. But no doubt I imagine that even just purely through learning another language widens your perspective in and of itself to others.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. To me, and there is a French expression that says, hold on, I'm trying to look for it exactly. Traveling builds the youth. So I'm translating literally. And I say, no, traveling builds your life, because you are learning so much by traveling, meeting new people, communicating with them, etc. And as I say, we don't know what we don't know.
En français?
So en français, the first expression is les voyages forment la jeunesse, but I say les voyages forment la vie.
I love it. I love it. Sounds much nicer in French, although I wouldn't have understood it in French, but thank you. So I know that through all of the countries that you've lived in, all the experiences that you've had the opportunity to live through, there have been many challenges. Wondering if you could share with us, one of the biggest obstacles that you've had to overcome in your life and what it taught you.
Dealing with other people, you mean other cultures, etc.
It could be. I know that you've had an accident. I know you've had many moves through your life. I think there's lots of lessons to be learned through those that we apply in multiple aspects. So what would you say?
Well, definitely my accident was probably one of the toughest experiences that I've had. So I was living in the Netherlands at that time, and I had gone to France to pick up my mom to spend a few days with me on holiday in the Netherlands. And we got this car accident in Belgium. Basically, we were stuck in a traffic jam under a tunnel, and a big truck hit us. So I ended up in the hospital, and it was the Flemish part of Belgium. So that's where they speak Dutch, fortunately. So when I was laying down and the doctors had just taken me from my accident, they started to tell me, well, your arm is broken. And I say, well, I could see that because my arm was folded the other way around. But then they used the word I never knew what it was. So they say your, and then they use the word becken is broken. And I was like, what is becken? I asked. And so they were trying to explain, and they were showing my back. So I said my back, and they were like, no. And then they say, so they went lower down, and they showed, so I say my hip, and they say no. And then again, looking around, saying, not my belly, no. And then they started to do like a kind of shape of a butterfly. And I say, oh, my pelvis. And they say, yes. And I was like, oh, great. Because I didn't feel pain there. But that's where I thought, okay, even though you speak fluently a language, there are always words you don't know, and especially medical terms or terms that you don't use on a day-to-day basis. So I've learned on that day how to say pelvis in Dutch. And before that, I had 2-3 years before, I broke my elbows as well, and I didn't know how to say elbow in Dutch, so I learned that as well. So you learn a few things like that. So and the challenge part as well is that my mom was with me in the car accident. She fortunately was not as much injured as I was. But they were when they found out I was speaking Dutch, because in Belgium usually they speak and French and Dutch, or Flemish as they call it. But the doctors, as soon as they heard that I could speak Dutch, they were only talking to me in Dutch. So every time I was, again, after being operated, they were coming to talk to my mom and to me. And every time I had to do the translation while I was laying and hurting. And I was like, oh, that's great. So again, these are little stories that I'm laughing now about, but at that time it was tough, because then you're already thinking, yeah, I'm in pain. I just want to recover and go back to my life. And then you're struggling with understanding what you need to do, what you shouldn't do, translating, etc. But that's, as I say, that's one part of the diversity, the challenge, but also what I love, because I say you always learn something from your experiences.
Wow. Speaking about inclusion a little bit, what do you think we need beyond the things that you said about keeping an open mind and not assuming, and listening and inviting others to share views?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think we need to be looking at a little differently? How do we need to be looking at this inclusion challenge a little differently? So that, I said, we've been working on this for a while, and I think we should be further ahead. We've got a lot of work to do, because it doesn't take much looking around, both in our own communities, our countries, and then globally. We're talking on a day where there've been some really horrific things in the news recently, and that's just going to continue. How do we need to be looking at inclusion as leaders?
That's also a great question, Louise. I think that it's going to take time. And actually, yesterday I was reading an article on a French news website. And it was interesting. They said it started at a very, very young age. So for instance, kids that are 4 years old, and you're showing them a cartoon with two characters that are, let's say, sexless, and they ask boys, okay. And so one of the characters is saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. And the other character is supposed to say, yes, okay. And they ask the little boys, who is the boy, who is the girl in the picture? And the boys were all saying, obviously, the dominant one was the boy, while the girls, they didn't make much difference. But what was interesting is that they did the same exercise with kids that were 3 years old, and 3-year-olds, they mixed. So apparently from 4 years old, that's when the biases start, and then the men see themselves, or see the men as the dominant one, and the women as the more accommodating one. So I think it starts from a young age, that we should all start to be aware of how we communicate with children, maybe not giving only pink to girls and blue to boys as a basic example, but that we really need to encourage that from a young age. And later on in a professional world, I would say, and you're like me, you're trying to empower women and improve, and helping them improve their confidence and optimize their potential. And it's great, it needs to be done, because there are lots of young ladies out there who need that. But I think we need to look beyond the gender and mix things more. We often say, that women need to support women. And yes, because sometimes we can be our own enemies as well. I've been there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to mix more men and women. Like, so men can mentor women, but women can mentor men as well. And that should be promoted more, I think. We should also try not to say, oh, women are like this and men are like that. We should try to see us as a whole, and we all can learn from each other, because we all have strengths that one gender doesn't do so well than the other. And I think by trying to see beyond the gender and trying to say, no, we are not going to say you women or you men, but we together can work on that. So I think, to me, that is one of the things that all companies should strive to do, is try to have people mix more, exchange their experience more, and, as I say, mentor each other, no matter what the level you are in a company, but really encourage these initiatives, because I think only that way we will start to have things change bit by bit.
I agree to all of that. And this too is a very complex concept.
Yes.
and topic. I'm wondering if you can, considering we're still on this topic of inclusion, talk to us a little bit about what privilege is and how that would factor into this concept that you're talking about, of having more of a we conversation. Because I'm wondering about, the people who, many of us, as a Caucasian, I have privilege.
Oh yes.
A white man has more privilege over me, and I recognize that you're talking about wanting to talk more about the we, but I don't think we can completely ignore the differences in privilege. So how do we blend that? Because I believe wholeheartedly in what you're saying, but then at the same time, if we completely ignore the reality that there are different experiences for different groups, I don't know if we end up help me understand what your thoughts are on this.
No, that's a great question, and I don't think we'll have enough of an hour or a day to discuss this. But you're right. I think in society in general, some people have more advantage as other, or privileges, as you said, and I think that, yes, we are so we all have something to offer. But as you say, we should not ignore our differences, because this is what makes teams strong. You may be good at, I don't know, hosting podcasts, and I may be good at being in an interview guest, right? So maybe I'm not going to, if I want to start my podcast tomorrow, maybe I'm not going to be as a great host as you are. So we should take all of our strengths and recognize them. And the strengths come from who we are, whether it's a man or woman, but also our background, where we come from. You coming from North America have a different experience than me coming from Europe. So again, there's something you can teach me, there's something I can teach you. And we need to be more aware, recognize more these differences, and use them as strengths, and see how we can use these strengths to build something together. There is nobody on earth that knows everything. We all have something to learn, but it's really, I think, and back to what I was saying at the beginning, we should never assume that everybody thinks the same way. We should never assume that everybody knows the same thing. We all have something to offer, and we all have something to learn from each other. So I think by keeping on reminding people that, yes, they may be great at this, and yes, they may be the boss for that, but they need also other people, because if we all would be the same person and they would liking the same things, doing the same things, there would not be all these companies out there, and not all these people out there thriving and moving forward. So I think recognizing the strengths of each and everyone, taking into consideration where they're coming from and the value they can add, it's very important. And it's not going to be done from one day to the other, as you know, it takes time. But I think by re-emphasizing all these things, starting from a young age, bit by bit, we may be able to change things in the future.
Such interesting conversation and gems that you've shared. How did you start working in this field? So your interest in this clearly started at a young age, When did you really kind of get turned on to this aspect of leadership?
I don't know. As I said, I was kind of thrown into it. One of my first jobs. So when I started to work in the Netherlands, I started actually at the beginning of internet. So I was doing technical support for the Microsoft network at that time, MSN, and I was helping French-speaking, English-speaking, and German-speaking customers getting on internet. And so I was in a team where we were from all over the world, and this was so much fun because we all had stories to share, things to say, the way we were communicating to customers, etc. And that's how I started to think like, well, when we are only just one type of person, let's say one nationality with the same profile, same gender, etc., it's actually not good, because we can bring so much when we are putting all these differences together. And then after I was given the chance to manage a team, and again a multilingual team, and it always stayed like that. And I've seen, and also I've had challenges. I had people who were often arguing with each other, not because they couldn't stand each other, but just because they could not understand each other. There was someone who was from Venezuela and the other one from Germany, where the Latin culture versus the German culture, sometimes the humor is completely different, the way of working is completely different. But you see that when you take time to explain people that, okay, this is the way things work, and you have your perspective, and this is why you think that way, and you also have another perspective, and there is nothing wrong. You both are right, and in a way you both are wrong, because again, you don't see things the same way. So as I say, I grew into it, and the more I was working with all these people from all over the world, the more I discovered, that to me there is no other way of being diverse and including people. This is the strongest team I've seen are the most diverse, whether it's with culture, with age, with gender, with different ability, different background. You have also people who are married, some are not, some have kids, some are not. All of this is part of diversity, and that's only when you put everything together that you can thrive and grow your team and help people better, because you have all these different aspects. So as I say, it grew slowly in my life, but now I say I love diversity. I live it and I need it. I couldn't go back to France and only be with French people, for instance. It's not me anymore.
I love that, and I also like the phrase "I grew into it." I like that because I think that we, many of us, I know I did, I lived a very, I intentionally took action that was getting me towards a certain goal, not recognizing that the life I was living along the way was actually providing other doors and pathways for me that would have been better for me. So it wasn't as living, breathing, it wasn't like this living organism. It was a path that I set out year 1 and year 10, I wanted to have achieved it. Life does, there's ebbs and flows to it, and there are things that occur that might nudge us somewhere else. And so I grew into it. Just sounds so alive, like it's a living and breathing, evolving thing. And it really is, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And personally as well, my family, my husband is from South America, from Suriname. My brother lives in the UK and he has a British girlfriend. So as I say, it's part of my life. My mom is in France. So I already have all this connection, and I could not, sometimes I'm thinking, okay, what if I had stayed in France? I would be married to a French person, be small town, maybe I would be divorced with 3 kids. Would I have been happier? I'm not sure, but I think I would have missed out so much by just being in France, speaking one language, being surrounded by the same people. It's just like, as I said before, you don't know what you don't know. And when you start discovering that there's so much out there, a life is definitely not enough, for sure.
Yeah, I was out for dinner last night with my parents, and the table next to us, I just asked my parents just to be quiet for a second so we could hear all the accents. There was a Canadian. There were only 4 people at the table, and there was 1 Canadian, 1 Scottish, 1 English, and 1 Irish. And I recognized that, you know, the Irish and the Brit, you know, that's all from the same sort of area, but still different countries. Yes. It dawned on me that was the first time I've ever heard a group of people all from different places. Yeah. And it was fascinating just to merely listen to their different accents, never mind what their different perspectives would be and the richness that would bring to any kind of conversation or any kind of topic.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, a few months ago, I was meeting some of my ex-colleagues from Amazon, and we met there with our family. And so we had two of my friends was from South Africa. One of the husband was from Britain, myself French, my husband from Suriname, and then another colleague of mine who is half French, half Canadian. And we were all around the table, and we had a great time. And as I say, I can't imagine my life just with just one certain type of people anymore, because you gain so much by having people bringing their own perspectives and ideas. So no, I love it, and as I say, I need it. I can't do it without now.
You said, I love it, I live it, I need it.
Yes,
I think it's bang on. So at this point in your life, what does a well-lived life look like for you? What does success look like for you?
So success, my definition of success is to be able to do what I want, when I want, wherever I want, and with whom I want. And in my world, I would say I see myself as a world citizen. So if tomorrow I would be able to travel and go somewhere and meet people, meet my friends, family, etc. That is what I would love to do, go and help people at the same time and trying to help them move forward, not reinventing the wheel, but using my experience and knowledge. That is what success would look like for me, and working on it. So yes.
Well, we're always in the process of becoming, as yes. Michelle Obama very eloquently, accurately put it.
Correct.
And it aligns very much with what you said, how you grew into your role, and you still are growing. We're always a work in progress. And so you're a work in progress towards what right now? What are you sort of working and growing towards right now?
Well, so I'm working and growing into becoming a coach and trainer, and being able to go and help people across the world. As I say, with my languages, obviously I can help people who speak English, but also, for instance, I found out via LinkedIn, there's lots and lots of demand from French-speaking countries in Africa, for instance. And so if I could one day go and help there, and as I say, teach them and share with them my knowledge and experience so that they can again move forward, that would be awesome. And if other languages come into play, that's great. But I think my goal is really to help people, not only where I'm based at here in Luxembourg, really everywhere across the globe, or if companies as well have different subsidiaries in different countries, and they want to ensure they have the same experience across their different subsidiaries. Well, instead of hiring someone who speaks English and someone who speaks French and someone who speaks German, well, I could be that person and making sure that the same experience is delivered. It's just the language that I would change, but they would have the same. So that's my goal.
That's wonderful. And what would a company be hiring you to do? And I'm asking that specific question because I know that we have listeners of the show who are leaders elsewhere in the world. So the specific kind of thing that you would be hired to do for a company would be what?
So definitely improving leadership skills, but then on an international level. As I said, being a leader in a company, it's one thing, but when you start dealing with people from all over the world, and that's what's happening nowadays more and more, how to deal with challenges, how to communicate better, also helping people getting more confident when they present, when they have to do presentations in front of their leadership teams, whether they need to prepare something, etc. And also especially for women as well, as I say, younger women who may not be so sure as men. So helping them with all of that, trying to show them as well how networking, how important it is as well. We sometimes often underestimate, and we think, oh, I'm too busy, I can't do this, or I can't go there and speak with that person. But so it's really improving their leadership, management skills, and confidence in an international environment.
Fantastic. So just so you know, I did know that. I knew that, but I wanted you to share that with the listeners. If you're listening right now and this is intriguing to you, I have got Virginie. I messed it up.
That's okay.
I was practicing so well. I've got Virginie's contact info in the show notes, so you can get to her through that. You can connect with her via LinkedIn, through her website, and through email. So get that from the show notes. What is your definition of leadership? What do you think what makes a good leader?
There's so many things. There's so many things that makes a good leader. For me, first and foremost, is someone who is empathetic, who has a vision, who inspires people, and who is a great communicator. And maybe the last but not least, who is always willing to learn. Because again, leaders are curious, leaders are readers, and great leaders usually know that they don't know everything, and they're always willing to learn. And that's why I said that keeping the open mind is so important, because you're always as strong as your team, as I say.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that. And so where do you get your inspiration from?
Oh, anywhere. So LinkedIn is a great place, because I'm inspired by people like you, Louise, and others who post on a regular basis and who share things. Reading as well a lot, watching documentaries, but also looking at people, and there are lessons everywhere, even in nature. If you take time to stop walking in the forest and you look at birds or animals there, and you can always draw something there. So I think inspiration is everywhere if we take the time to notice and observe and pause and reflect.
Inspiration's everywhere. I agree. I mentioned already, I was out for dinner with my mom, my parents. It was my parents, my poor dad. It really was kind of like it was my mom and I. And I asked my mom if she liked people watching. I hadn't asked her that before, because I'm just fascinated, which is why I was trying to not overhear the people next to me, yet did, and heard all those different accents. They're real, and even through that, there's inspiration. I also wanted to mention, because you brought it up about inspiration in the forest, if we can pause long enough to, to breathe and to expand our awareness and listen and feel. I only became aware of this term, I think it was in the summer, forest bathing.
Oh, never heard of that.
Okay, so I encourage you to Google it. And anyone listening who also feels like they are fueled by being in the woods, there is a real thing called forest bathing. And I'm not going to be, essentially the long and short of forest bathing is what you just said, is the enriching experience you can get from the forest and its energy and its life-giving qualities when you take a moment to take it in. So when you open yourself up to the energy of the forest by pausing and looking, like using your senses, like look, listen, and feel, it actually, there is a scientific measurement of the energy exchange between the living forest and humanity. I thought it was very cool.
Yeah.
So
no, I never heard that term, but yes, that's exactly it. Definitely.
And it makes sense. It makes sense, right? But it was actually interesting for me to read, because it was putting into words and something more tangible that I had been intuitively feeling my whole life, because I lived near the woods. I can throw a stone from my house. I live totally in suburbia, but we're right on the edge of suburbia, and I can throw a stone from my house to this protected woodland. And I love to go in there for that very reason. I can feel my cup filling up. I feel like my bucket filling up as soon as I set foot in there.
Yeah.
So this kind of brings me to a question, could be similar to what we're just talking about in terms of this forest bathing or being in the woods. Is there a tool or ritual or habit that you can't live without that helps you have a rock star day that's really aligned with how you want to be showing up in the world? What would those rituals or tools be?
So for the last year and a half, approximately, I'm doing yoga and meditation in the morning. I've noticed that it keeps me grounded and centered. It helps me also to relax and start the day with full of energy. And it's funny because in the past I was like, well, yoga, it's too quiet for me. But when I started to try it, and I was like, well, actually, that is really, really good. So I'm trying to do that 3-4 times per week, because the other days I go to the gym as well. So when I go to the gym, then I don't do yoga, but usually I try to meditate at least every day, either very early in the morning when I get up, and if for some reason I missed it, I do that in the evening before going to bed. So that's definitely two of the things I do, and that are really working and helping. Yes.
They do, don't they? I resisted meditation for many, many, many years, and it's been now about a year that I've been meditating very, very regularly. And I've been shocked, even though the science told me what it would do. I've been shocked actually realizing it myself and having the experience myself. Yeah. And the thing for me that I thought was neat is, well, I remember hearing like meditation is like it's like gym for the brain. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of neat to really put it into a context of, oh, okay, and then what does that actually mean? What the biggest impact for me, and that's something I didn't really recognize the full impact until it happened, was how daily meditation doesn't just help me in the moment of setting myself up for a great day. In stressful moments, I find myself just now automatically using some of those breathing techniques, so those grounding and centering. I'm able to get grounded and centered without even meaning to. Right? It becomes part of how I show up and be, and that has been really quite transformative for me.
Yeah, and I know if I remember a few weeks ago, I didn't meditate as often as I wanted to, and I miss it at some point. I really need to stop and say, okay, now that's it. I'm stopping, and I need my me time. Yes, yeah, no, I fully agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I wanted to share that. I try to share that whenever I can. Throw that in there for those others who may be resisting meditation, who may at some point hear me say that enough times that say, oh, I will try it already, and give yourself a week. Do it for 1 minute, just even 1 minute, 1 minute a day. Start so small that you can hardly fail. Do not set yourself up to sit down and meditate for half an hour. It's not going to happen. And so this actually kind of brings me to another question in terms of what makes people, why do you believe people succeed?
So to me, there are 2 or 3 basic things that I see successful people do. The first one is that they are able to take a decision, because you often have people who say, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do this, or should I do that? And then they keep back and forth for ages. No, you first have to take a decision. And whatever decision you take, there will always be pros and cons. There is no perfect decision. There is always pros and cons, but there are always pros and cons, but you need to take a decision. Make a decision. That's number 1. Number 2 is you need to act on it, because again, making a decision is one thing, but if you don't do nothing with it, then it's just going to be something that you wish for, and that's not going to happen. So this act. And the third thing is discipline. And it's back to what you were saying with meditation, with exercising, with achieving your goals on a professional basis, or for you personally. If you are not disciplined to do things on a regular basis, and when I say regular, it's usually daily or weekly, depending on what you want to achieve, or even hourly, but you need to do things on a consistent basis and have the discipline. And that's where people, I think, mostly are failing. They do decide, they do start acting, and the New Year's resolutions are the best example. Yes, I'm going to go to the gym from now on. And they go once, they go twice, and then that's it. And so really having the discipline to say, no, I need to continue again and again. And as you said, with the example of meditation, once you have the habit of doing it, then after it becomes natural, and you don't see that as being disciplined because it's part of your life. But I think to me, that's the three components that makes people successful, is when they decide, when they act, and they are disciplined. So they act on a regular basis.
I love that, and say a big yes, a big fat yes to all of those. Discipline, I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about the whole discipline thing, because I think that more than ever, we are in a society where instant gratification is, there's always, instant gratification is something that researchers have studied for years. Yeah. But I think now in this social media world, this on-demand world, I was even, that we can have things so quickly that even the act of discipline, I think people are becoming less able to, less able to behave in a disciplined way. They're looking for motivation, and I'm sorry, friends, motivation fades very, very quickly. What you need is commitment and discipline to do the thing long after the feeling of wanting to has passed.
Yeah. It's funny when, I think it's a year ago, something like that, I saw a young girl walking in the street, and she had a t-shirt where it was written, "It's all about motivation." And I didn't stop her, and maybe now looking back, I think maybe I should have. I wanted to tell her, no, it's not all about motivation, because we're all motivated to become healthier, to be more successful, to da-da-da-da-da. It's discipline. It's all about discipline. The motivation, we all have it, but it's really the discipline that is important. And again, you don't see the result, and that's back to what you were saying. The problem is, or the challenge is that you don't see the result straight away. Someone who wants to lose 10 kilos or 10 pounds will not see it tomorrow because today they ate a salad. No, they need to do that every single day for a while before they start seeing the results. And so discipline is key. Otherwise, yeah, you can be as motivated as you want. If you're not disciplined, you're not going to achieve your goal.
And so what are your thoughts? So we're, I guess, putting your coaching hat on here. What are your thoughts or tips or guidance on choosing a goal then that you can remain disciplined with? So, because I don't know about you, but I've seen people choosing goals quite flippantly. And when it gets hard, they then lack the motivation to be disciplined, and they decide, oh, it's not worth it. So can you talk a little bit about how you would go about choosing a goal? What needs to be rooted in?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say go step by step. So don't try to achieve a huge goal. So let's take an example of someone who wants to lose weight. If someone wants to lose 100 pounds or 100 kilos, don't say, I want to lose 100 kilos within next month. No, it's not realistic. You need to say, okay, first this month, I'm going to lose 5 kilos, and then etc. So really do it step by step. What's interesting is these last few days, I've been hearing a lot about not setting goals, but intentions. And I think it's very powerful. I'm still thinking about it as a whole. I think you need the direction. So you need to have your long-term goals. That needs to be there. But then in between, I think, yeah, intentions are actually probably more powerful, because you probably don't feel as pressured as achieving your goal. And as you say, if you don't achieve it, then you may be disappointed, and then you may go back even worse than when you started. So I think by really setting intention, yes, I want to be healthier, or yes, I want to be more successful in my career, or yes, I want to be promoted. Try to have this intention, and then try to see what you can do every day to work towards that goal. And I think by achieving a little goal one day, then celebrate your success, celebrate that, yes, you've achieved what you wanted, then that helps you move to the next day and the next day and the next mini goal, let's say, rather than saying, okay, I want to have this by then, and then it's almost impossible. So that would be my advice.
I love intentions. I set intentions every day. Yes. And so using the whole discipline thing. So discipline is something that I struggle with in a certain part of my life. And so that is usually one of my intentions every day. So I am going to be disciplined. And for me, and I write out what that actually looks like. It means following through on the plan that I have set out today.
Yeah.
And so And so whether that then means I've got exercise in my calendar that day, whether it's self-care that day, whether it's my first 90 minutes doing a certain kind of work, so I have a significant structure to my day. I've been very intentional about how I lay my days out. And so I rocked at that, but then I was not rocking so much. I was kind of like, meh, on actually following through with what I said I was going to do. And so that for me is really where the intention piece comes in. If you plan out what your goals, what each day, what realizing your goals looks like, then when you set the right intentions every day, it helps you show up as the person who does those types of things.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay. Get in touch with one of us. If you're listening and wondering more about intentions, reach out to one of us or Google it. It's pretty, it is very, very powerful, and it is very positive. So how did you get started? You mentioned that you most recently were working at Amazon. You've launched your own business. I'd love for you to share with us how you came to that decision. So you were very decisive and you took action. So
yes.
Kudos, high fives to you. How did you get to that decision, and then how did you take the leap? Because a lot of listeners I know either have taken the leap or are on the point of, do I do it? Do I not? Can you help us understand your journey through that decision process?
So if I'm very honest, it was one of the toughest decisions I've taken in my life, is leaving Amazon. Amazon is a great company. It's not for everybody, because I have the question a lot. Lots of pressure, lots of work, but it's so rewarding because you can learn so much. And so I had a great job, great team. And with my husband, we've been wanting to travel the world for quite some time. And his children at that time were living in Suriname and wanted to come back to Europe. So we knew that if they would come back to live with us, we would be, let's say, stuck with the school holidays and would not have flexibility anymore. So that's why I thought, okay, it's now or never. Let's go and travel the world. So I did resign from Amazon. As I say, was one of the toughest decisions I've taken. And so we traveled the world basically for a few months and went to different places. It was amazing. And so when I came back, so it was end of 2017 to beginning of 2018, I started to coach myself, and I thought, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to go back to work in a corporate environment, and maybe going back to Amazon? Because a lot of my ex-colleagues were telling me, oh, you have to come back, you have to come back. So that was that. Or I was thinking, oh, do I start something on my own? And if so, what? So again, coaching myself, looking at what I like, what I'm good at, what I want to do. And what do people say about me? And one thing actually that stood out is when I was in Amazon, we did a few personality tests. And so I reread all the documents, all the reports I got, and something stood out that I never saw before. And in each of these documents, all my colleagues were saying I was very good at coaching and mentoring people, at developing people and helping them further with their career. And I was like, yeah, actually, I've always done that. Even though I never had the title of a coach or a mentor, but I've always managed teams. I've always mentored and coached people. I've always helped them get their promotions or get the job they wanted, etc. So I was like, yeah, actually, that's what I've always done. So I thought, okay, let me try now. I have the energy. Financially, we're okay. I'm in a fortunate position. So I was thinking, if I don't try now, maybe in 10 years it will be too late, because maybe I will not feel like doing it, or I will be tired, or the economic environment will have changed. So I thought, okay, I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to start and let's see where this will bring me. So that's how I started. And I must say it has been an incredible journey. I'm not there yet where I want to be, but I've learned so much, meeting so many great people like yourself, Louise, that I would have never met if I hadn't been on LinkedIn. And it's been amazing. Every day and every week I'm learning something new, whether it's about someone or a tool that's out there or what people do. And I'm really, really enjoying it. So so far, yeah, it's been a ride. And of course, I do miss working in Amazon. As I said, it was challenging, but I also had great fun with all of my colleagues and my teams. But now it's a different fun, and I love the flexibility. I must say that is one of the things when you work for yourself, is that you can also work many hours, but you're more flexible in your schedule. You don't have to be at 8 or 9 o'clock in the office. You can start later and finish later. So I love that. Yes.
Sure can. So my final question to you is related to my tagline, which is be brave, be bold, be happy. I'm wondering, what does being brave and bold mean to you?
So to me, that means doing things you never thought you could do, or that people would tell you, you can't do that. So it's really having the courage to take that decision. And even if you yourself don't think you're brave or courageous, for people that look at you, they think, oh, wow, she did this or he did that. So to me, it's stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing things that you never thought you could do before.
So congrats to you on being brave and bold as you have stepped and are continuing to grow into this role of coach and international trainer and speaker. So Virginie, thank you so much for spending your time with me, sharing your gems and experience with myself and of course all of my listeners.
Well, thank you for having me, Louise. It was great and I was really glad to be here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. And of course, thanks to all of you, my loyal listeners, and remind you that information about my radio show and my guests can be found at louisehreed.com. Also, a big shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network, and a shout out to my love, Jay Andrews. I wouldn't be here without you either. So until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you a bold and courageous day. Goodbye, my friends.
Bye.